All aboard! Next stop, Chicago Junction.
Yes, it's this time again for this month's broadcast of Chicago Junction. The program takes you through the wonderful world of trains with help from our panel of experts, and hopefully we'll have some calling guests eventually. I'm your announcer, Brian Blue, and here is our boss, the head of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and Chief Electrical Engineer, Mr. John DeVita.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. Happy New Year to all our panelists here and to all our great listeners out there in Radio Land. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Chicago Junction from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, December the 13th, the year 2021. Today, the panel will be talking about railroads and model railroads. And now to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Mr. Brian.
Oh, thank you very much, John. And yes, we're getting ready to start up first program of the year. And again, I am Brian Valou. I was railroader, engineer for Metro UP, Navy 24 years, and just like to play with trains, both indoor and outdoor. I belong to several museums, luckily, and just like to study the subject. So fascinating. And to my left, I have Kevin Berry.
Hi, my name is Kevin, and I'm a train junkie. I'm a director with the Chicagoland Lionel Railroad Club, a retired Chicago police sergeant, a railroading merit badge counselor for the scouting program, both boys and girls. And since 1957, a devout Lionel operator and collector.
Hi, I'm Ron Stock, retired library director at Eisenhower Public Library, serving Norwich, Harwood Heights. I'm a filmer, very much a filmer. Love trains, and not as experienced as most of the panelists, but gain a lot of knowledge, frankly, being here. So, from our experts.
Please don't call me an expert. My parents were married in the church.
That's a good start.
Gotcha, Brian.
That's an oldie but a goodie.
Yes.
Almost forgot about that one. Oh. Well, as you can see, we're a little short, and we're going to try to make up, at least have a half-decent program.
Brian has indicated he will join us as soon as he escapes from the meeting he was forced to attend. Or David, I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
My short-term memory is failing rapidly.
Yeah. Well, came across some small news items. The SS Badger, the last survivor of the Great Lakes railcar ferries, has been sold.
Oh. Had the pleasure of crossing the lake on that ship.
Yeah, Monday Morning Rail News. SS Badger, the last of the Great Lakes rail ferries, has a new owner. The last survivor of the railroad ferries that once crossed the Great Lakes and the last coal-fired passenger steamship in the United States has changed hands. The Maritime Executive reports the SS Badger, built in 1952 for the Chesapeake and Ohio rail service across Lake Michigan, has been acquired by the Interlake Holding Company. Interlake operates 9 Great Lakes freighters, is building a new freighter, U.S. Lake freighter, in nearly 4 decades. And President Mark W. Barker told the website that the company is fully committed to continuing operation between Ludington, Michigan, and Manitowoc. The Badger, which has been designated a National Historic Landmark, was operated by the C&O until 1980, and by a local company concentrating on rail freight until 1990. It was revived in 1992 and has operated ever since with the emphasis on leisure, travel, tourism, and commercial truck traffic. Interlake acquired the ferry from the Lake Michigan Car Ferry Company, which has owned it by two local businessmen since 1994. So at least we're going to still be sailing the seas.
Brian, you know something? I've been on that ship several times. We used to, when I first got married in 1966, my wife and I, we drove to Milwaukee, got on the ship, or was it, yeah, then we crossed Lake Michigan to Ludington. And there we got off, and we drove up to Mackinac Islands. I did that about 2 or 3 times.
Well, it sounds like it's a beautiful trip.
Yes, it was. It was beautiful weather. I mean, we went in June. The weather was just beautiful, and it was just a beautiful trip. And we were up on the deck, and we saw our car being driven on. And then when we got to Ludington, Michigan, we saw the car taken off the boat and parked in the parking lot. Memories I'll never forget.
That's good. And
when we went, they told us that a week or two before, the Anheuser-Busch Clydesdales had crossed going from Wisconsin to Michigan to do an appearance at the State Fair, and that the same day that the Clydesdales were there, Kevin, the Robin Hood, Kevin Costner pulls up with 2 semis. I guess he has a band. No reservations. Wants to get his trucks on board. And was told, you'll have to wait for the next crossing. You didn't make reservations. They weren't going to put any private citizens off to make room for his 2 48 or 54-foot semi-trailers.
Okay.
Works for me. Great crossing, though. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, keep looking online. You'll be able to still get reservations.
I've got the patch from that ship on my vest.
For the next news, Colorado Pacific will ask the STB to block lease of the Tennessee Pass line. The Colorado Pacific Railroad, which had one attempt to gain control of Tennessee Pass line, dismissed by the Surface Board of Transportation, says it will ask the STB to block Union Pacific's agreement to lease the former Denver and Rio Grande line to Rio Grande Pacific, Colorado's Midland and Pacific. The website RealVale reports that Hayden Solvay of Colorado Pacific's parent company announced that intent in a press release. Solvay is vice chairman of Solo Building Company and Crossroads Agriculture, said the company will appeal on grounds that the lease means Union Pacific maintains its monopoly stronghold across the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, in defiance with concerns about Tennessee Pass stated by the board in its decision in the 1996 UP-SB merger case. Rio Grande Pacific announced the lease last week. Colorado Pacific's attempt to force a sale of the route was dismissed by the STB in March. but the company launched another bid later in the year. Okay. And the Colorado Pacific said it would offer passenger service. Union Pacific actually owns the trackage, so how can they claim monopoly?
Did UP abandon that section of track?
No. They disconnected it. Actually pulled up a section of rail to prevent anybody going through. They're not using the pass at this time.
So, okay, it's inert, it's not abandoned.
Right.
Okay.
And apparently sabotage was blamed for a derailment of a freight train in Mexico. Sabotage is being blamed for the derailment in Veracruz, Mexico, that derailed 11 freight cars carrying new vehicles for export to Europe. The December 31st, the derailment came after a train carrying vehicles from a Volkswagen plant in Puebla, Mexico, to the port of Veracruz, hit a section of right-of-way where thieves had removed 6 feet of track to stop the train and steal the merchandise. 6 of the rail cars rolled over and some dropped into a ravine. Okay.
Not good, very bad.
Yes. All right, what's next? I believe Amtrak news.
Amtrak's been burning up the internet trying to sell train trips.
Well, they're trying to sell train trips, but they're not. A lot of the trips are not been restored yet. Remember, all them nice cross-country trains are tri-weekly. Analysis: coach sellouts hinder Amtrak long-distance travelers. In a period when COVID-19 pandemic made travel more of a last-minute decision than it has been in the past, a Trains New Wire review shows Amtrak passengers on the Northeast Corridor continue to purchase tickets throughout the New Year holiday weekend. Such late decisions are not an option for passengers on many long-distance routes, where the move to tri-weekly operation has exacerbated by limited coach seat availability. Although Amtrak has expanded sleeping car capacity on some trains in an effort to meet increased demand, sellouts in coach are still depriving the long-distance segment of revenue and ridership. These factors are, the company says, it will evaluate on a route-by-route basis to determine whether to restore daily service. Amtrak permits coach occupancy of no more than 50% capacity on all trains as part of its current health safety protocols. This means those not traveling with someone else are guaranteed to have a seat by themselves, greatly enhancing their onboard experience at a time when airlines and other public transportation providers have dispensed with previous commitments to guarantee social distancing. The company has repeated stress that this advantage in advisories, advertising, and social media. The percentage of each train seats sold are displayed on Amtrak's website for the segment passengers seek to book. Northeast Corridor the Trains New Wire checks through the New Year's holiday to track availability capacity for January 3rd. On the Northeast Corridor trains leaving Boston, New York, and Washington. The following a similar effort in November for Sunday after Thanksgiving, was also tried. They only see scattered sellouts back then. Early in the weekend, fares and percentage seats sold for 22 southbound trains from New York and 19 northbound trains from Washington. Both Excelas and Northeast Regionals were generally lower than they had been on the post-Thanksgiving trains of November 29th. But as sales continue the course of the weekend, occupancy rates and ticket prices both increased. This reflected the yield management practice that encourages early booking while maximizing revenue. See, I can't do that. That's what the airlines are doing. And all of a sudden, because of all the airline people with Amtrak, you don't have set prices anymore. You buy at the beginning of the month, and if you don't find out you're traveling until a week before, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. The price is almost 3 times as much.
Well, you might as well be booking a cruise.
Yeah. In fact, already the limited departures are already sold out on long-distance trains. So even then, it's, when's it going to stop? When are they going to be more practical? Yes, I agree, we have to have social distancing. Well, fine. Put another locomotive on the front so you don't keep losing locomotives. I'm sorry, one locomotive on a train. You're asking for trouble. You don't know when it's going to happen. That's why you put 2 on. Even if you're only covering like 6 or 8 cars. It's called, that's why the diesel trains were always over. When they had problems, they just kicked on another unit. They had another unit to pick up the slack.
That's why they developed MU cables.
Yes. But see, we got a 4,000 horsepower locomotive. We don't need another locomotive.
Until you need it.
Until you need it. Because how many of the trains are late because, we got 8-10 hours waiting to get an engine.
There was one a commuter this morning that was 25 minutes late with mechanical problems. And, that train probably only went 40 or 50 miles.
Well, see, I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about Amtrak and its long-distance trains. Or even just their inner-city trains. Especially when you don't have many trains on a route. If you have only 2 or 3, 2 or 4 trains, you got problems. That's why you have a lot of them down south. They don't have they have long-distance trains, but where there's, other coverage. Anyway, I don't know what I'm talking about, so.
Unfortunately, you do, sir.
Yes.
Okay.
When my family took that Galesburg special, back when my kids were small, I'd say it's probably 25 years ago now, we call it, my daughter refers to it as the train trip from hell. We had one steamer. And when it went down, we were stranded. We had to wait 2.5 hours for them to find a diesel and send a diesel out to pull us into Galesburg.
Yeah, I know that. I heard about that. But see, here you're talking with a steam locomotive. So, in other words, you don't want a historic steam ride, you know. There were a lot of trips that were just steam locomotive without the diesel. I mean, they carry, you know, you look at a lot of the Norfolk Southern trips. You know how they got their head end power? They had a baggage car that was converted to be supply head end power for the rest of the train. And who took care of it? The steam locomotive on the front. You know?
That's probably why the FRA came up with that rule. You can't run a steamer if it doesn't have a diesel behind it.
No, they didn't. They're running diesels now to help out with the HEP. Well, it's like you see the pictures of the big boy in the snow last year. They didn't have any diesels on them there. They had some passenger cars they were pulling. And everybody was calling it the Polar Express.
Yeah, well.
So what do you have for us, sir?
A couple of things for show and tell tonight, and it just arrived in today's mail. The LCCA came up with the 10th anniversary Polar Express animated billboard, and it has two screens. One that has a quartering on shot from the right-hand side of the engine, and a herald that says 10th anniversary to Polar Express, and the other one, come on, is just the Polar Express, and it's got a beautiful down the track shot, and it looks, it's in North Pole City, down the track towards the Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, this is an LCCA member exclusive, which would tend to make me think that maybe in the 2021 or the 2022 Lionel calendar, this might be available to the general collecting public. Usually LCCA gets something, a year before it's offered to the world. Chooch Enterprises, which makes vinyl accessories, roadways and trees and stuff like that, has been acquired by William K. Walters Inc. The gentleman who owned Chooch Enterprises wanted to retire, and Walters bought it. So if you use their products or you want to use their products, you can still order them online, and it will automatically be kicked over to Walters, and Walters will fulfill the order. Last month, I mentioned that Woodland Scenics had offered a set of country or frontier style fences, post and rail, and simulated barbed wire. They have expanded that line. They now offer chain link, picket, and metal privacy fence. The metal privacy fence looks to me to be sheets of galvanized metal. But that's the way it appears to me. That may not be how they intended it. I finally acquired the 8-car consist for the Csx Executive Train, powered by two F40PH engines, 9999 and 9998. I actually saw this train 10 or 15 years ago. while I was sitting in a ComEd yard working my retirement job. I saw it shooting across the tracks out at about 145th Place or 146th in Torrance Head and East. I finally convinced myself that I needed these cars and spent all my Discover You Owe Me money on them. One of the cars is a sleeper car in B&O Enchantment Blue and Insignia Yellow, the CSX colors. Nicely decaled, big CSX Herald, and at the lead end of the car, little tiny letters that say CSX T and then a 6-digit stock number, inventory number. Anyhow, one of the cars is the Youngstown, which is a sleeper car. It was originally owned by Atlantic Coast Line. It is the last remaining car of its type in active rail service. It has 5 master bedrooms and 10 roomettes. On the actual train, there's only 9 roomettes because they modified one by putting a stationary bike in it so the executives can get their exercise while they're on the train. And I think that's about all I got at the moment.
Okay. I got 2 books that I brought along. The first one is a terrific book. It's by Kallenbach, and it was done in 2020. It's Union Pacific's Big Boys. The foreword is by Jim Wynn, and the editor is let's see, Jeff Wilson. And he's written edited several other railroad books. It's a complete story from the history to restoration of the 4014. But it does have a lot of other pictures of other big boys in it. In addition, they have a chapter on various railroads' articulates and what the real alignment was and when they were built and which was the first. They also have a history of the 4014 starting in 1940 and leading up to when it's just been activated in 2014, or excuse me, 2019. They have all the facts about the particular engine, what it costs, the traction, how much fuel. It was originally a coal burner. Now it's an oil burner. And they discussed whether they had a discussion whether they were going to use the Challenger's tender or the tender that came with it, which was originally it was a big boy, but it wasn't the 4014's tender. And it's got a lot of pictures in it, and the book comes in both hardbound and paperback. The paperback edition costs $25 or $30, $29.99. The hardbound, I think, is probably around $45 or $50. And if you go online, you should be able to find it, or go to Kallenbach's website, and since they're the publisher, and they should have information about it. The ISBN number to order it is 978-162700794. And if you plug that in, if you go to either Kalmbach, probably Amazon also has it. But it's a terrific book. It's got a lot of photographs, most of which are color. The chapters on it are 10. Starts out with the birth of the legend, the big boy impressions, without equal, compound articulated, simple articulated, which was the biggest, superpower, yes they could handle it, on the road again, and where the boys are, and finally the last chapter, the big boy gallery. So, terrific book. I would recommend it if you're a fan of either Union Pacific, Big Boy, or railroad history. The second book I have is Chicago Railroads in Transition, the photography of Lou Gerard, and it's put out by the Shoreline Interurban Historical Society, and it's dispatch number 10. It runs $25. And it's pretty much a color history of Metro and the various traction railroads, the North Shore, South Shore, and other interurbans, as well as Amtrak. And a good history of the various railroads. A lot of pictures in it. The other thing at the end, which is kind of cool, they have about 5 pages on the Great Lakes boats, and they talk about the ore ships that came into Calumet Harbor and other parts of the Calumet River. So, very, very good, excellent work. Let's see. Currently, this was in Train Magazine, January 21. Metro and UP fight spawns another court case. Commuter agency sues railroad over fare collection. UP says it's putting safety first. The already rocky relationship between Union Pacific and Chicago Commuter Railroad Metro has become even more contentious and litigious. Metro sued the freight railroad in Cook County, Illinois court in October, saying its arbitrary and conspicuous refusal to deploy conductors for fare collection and other activities on the UP-operated commuter trains on 3 metro routes is damaging the commuter agency's income and your reputation. While Metro stopped collecting fares on all routes early in the COVID-19 pandemic, all lines except the 3 operating by UP resumed the activity in June. Union Pacific did nothing to collect fares until October 5th, when it began checking tickets for inbound and outbound passengers at the past employees in plexiglass enclosures in downtown Ogilvy's Transportation Center. Metro said this cost it millions of dollars in ticket revenue and that the practice at Ogilvy's was unsafe, unfeasible, and in effect was not suitable for abiding by the terms of the contract between the 2 entities. If further said, UP's refusal to have crew members move through the train to check the tickets and passengers created safety issues. Metro's CEO and Executive Director Jim Derwinski said the railroad had refused to address these issues in any meaningful way and it left us no recourse but to seek relief through the courts. UP responded by saying its actions reflected safety concerns as it is unwilling to put fare collection ahead of employee and commuter health and safety during a global pandemic. We are prepared to vigorously defend ourselves in court. It also said the ticket checking system at the downtown station was working well and that it had repeatedly asked Metro to increase its police presence on the trains to ensure fare enforcement and address security issues such as passengers not wearing masks to address the COVID-19 concerns. The suit comes at a time when Metro and Union Pacific are already in court over future operations of the UP's West, Northwest, and North lines. The federal suit filed by Union Pacific in December 2019 seeks to determine, among other issues, its obligation to continue to operate commuter trains in the absence of a contract. UP has said it wants to turn over the computer operations as well as the personnel needs for them to Metro, while continuing to control the dispatch along the routes themselves. In its response to the latest lawsuit, UP said it's worked diligently with Metro over the last 15 months to find an agreeable solution for the seamless service transfer upon the expiration of the contract. Metro's view is less positive. In a filing where it asked the U.S. Surface Transportation Board to intervene in the dispute, a request the STB subsequently deferred while the federal court case plays out. It said UP has asking Metro to pay more dollars in absolute terms even while UP performs fewer services. So it goes.
When it gets to the point that the lawyer sues himself, then it will be truly interesting.
Yes. First and Fast had a really good article about the Columbian exposition, and it had about their various trains that took people to the fair and information about what was going on at the fair. And then there was also an article about the Metropolitan's car 2756, the most unusual L car. And what was interesting, this car was a funeral car. And it also served as a medical car, hospital car. And there have a lot of accompanying photographs of it in its various stages, depending on what it was being used for.
Did they say which road it was attached to?
I'm sure it did. Let me see.
I think it was attached to the Metropolitan.
Yeah. Well, one of the places it was at was in Mundelein. They have a picture there. So I have a feeling it might have traveled all over the place. But let's see what. The car was built in 1905, and it was originally rights agreed to the Aurora, Elgin, and Chicago Railroad.
Okay.
And later it was on the 52nd Laramie Avenue, Chicago far west side trackage. So it seemed like it roamed about throughout. And they did have, I know one time I was doing research on some local history for Eisenhower, and I was reading through, and back in the, I would say from 1880s to maybe about 1920, they ran a lot of funeral trains, burial trains, through Chicago and to the various cemeteries that were close by.
Well, they did that in L.A. also.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen the funeral cars out at the Orange Empire Railway Museum. They got 2 of them.
Okay, cool.
The section of the city that I live in, Mount Greenwood, they used to run a lot of funeral trains down the Rock Island, and they would stop at 111th Street. Well, if you go west from Hale, which is the first street east of Longwood Drive, you go up the hill. By the time you get to California Avenue, which is 12 blocks, you start hitting cemeteries. And there are 7 cemeteries between California Avenue and Ridgeland Avenue. And they, back at the turn of the 19th and 20th century, funerals were all-day events. And, there were dining halls, because if anybody made the funeral, they'd never make it home at night if you didn't feed them. And that's how the village of Mount Greenwood got its start. And Mount Greenwood was not incorporated into the city until 1934. But, that's an indelible part of the history of Mount Greenwood. Of course, all the people with the nice houses lived on Longwood Drive north of 103rd Street. The palatial mansions.
By Dave.
No, he lives south of 111th Street.
Oh, okay.
But he's got
peasant area.
He's got a nice house too. My godfather had a house at 105th and Longwood Drive. He cut a deal with his neighbor that lived west of him because he had the double down, the kids' ideal snow sled run. You could not come down his driveway in winter if there was any snow or ice, because you literally wouldn't stop until your front wheels hit the east curb of Longwood Drive. It was a different kind of Fast and Furious. But yeah, I mean, there's some beautiful houses over there. I couldn't afford to pay the property taxes on them. They were that pretty.
So, Doug.
Yes.
Doug has arrived.
I've arrived.
All right.
Yes.
Cancel the all call. Doug has been located.
Yes.
Yeah, these meetings with administrators, give them a microphone and they never shut up.
Oh, mother-in-laws?
For a while we thought where's Waldo,
Oh, yeah. Well, you were talking about the UP getting sued by Metra. UP is in the middle of a mess right now with 2 different railroads. One called Colorado Pacific. You already talked about it? And Colorado Midland and Pacific and the Tennessee Pass. Okay, so you already covered that. So, good. I don't have to talk about it. Well, I got a couple items. I don't have a lot for a change, but Norfolk Southern and someplace called Comply 365 are deploying what they call T&E tools to all their workers. Now, it says here, Norfolk Southern's digital transformation initiative now includes rule books, bulletins, special instructions, and other mission-critical documents that the railroad's more than 8,000 T&E, train an engineer, Engine workers, conductors, engineers, and other field operating personnel are required to carry on duty. NS has contracted with cloud-hosted software provider Comply 365 for rollout of the content management system and mobile application to digitalize operations, don't laugh, improve efficiency, and enhance safety and compliance. Now, I'm not going to read the rest of the article, but here's my question to you. Okay? When you're an engineer, you're issued a rule book. Okay, and a bunch of other books probably too, timetables, whatever. When they updated them, they gave you a new book, right?
Well, they usually gave us the replacement pages.
Okay.
Now, some, like our timetables, yes, they'll just give us a new timetable.
Okay. Or like the Cora books where they just...
the Core, they'll just give us a whole new Core.
Okay, now what they're going to probably do is give these guys tablets.
Oh, yeah, they've been trying to do that.
Which will go up to the cloud, which means management can roll out a change and never tell them that it's there because it's your responsibility to log in every day and take a look. As an engineer, how would you feel about that? Since you are can be recriminated against, you could speak out.
Well, it's an issue that a lot of people bring up. Here we are, we ain't supposed to use our phones, but by God, if we're in a bad situation, I'm going to use the phone. And yes, the train will be stopped. But yeah, okay, they're holding you responsible. They want you to check, but when you get briefings and all, you should be. Usually it's on the board. But now you got to go through and check your computer and everything, tablet, whatever, laptop, and and like you say, now they're making you responsible for it. We'll add it. You just got to look at them and see if it was added.
Sure, because you looked at the rule book, you read it online, and by the time you got to the terminal and you did something, and all of a sudden you're being written up for violating a rule, and you go, what rule? Oh, yeah, they changed it about 20 minutes ago. You didn't see it?
I'm in transit.
Well, that wouldn't mean anything.
How much lead time do engineers get between the start of the shift and when they've got to be in the equipment operating?
Depending upon, what job we're on, whether it's going to be there or whatever,
when you come to the yard office, you pick up paperwork, right, for the train and train.
And they'll say,
train.
Your train's waiting out on track 2. Your train hasn't come in yet. It's like that with the freight. Of course, with the precision railroading they're doing now,
everything's running smoothly.
I don't know if you saw Santushi's article about that.
No.
Oh, yeah, you go out to the Hot Time on the High Iron. He just posted a whole thing about it, and people are just going crazy commenting about it. It was really good, too, from the other side. So, anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. I saw that out there, and, the cloud part interests me, obviously, because of computers.
Yeah, all of a sudden, you go, we're doing cloud, and, yeah. I can understand that. It's another one of those mysteries.
So. On that note, with different transportation system, Smithsonian does a air disaster, and they talk about various plane crashes. They had that actually come up in one of them, where the manufacturer of the airline and the people who were supposed to pass the information on to the pilot never told them. They had the information, so when the FAA investigated, they had to make changes so that there was better communication going on. And it was the airline's part, they had to tell the pilots that. And especially, not that trains don't have deadly accidents, but in the airline industry, if something goes wrong with the plane, there's not much you can do if you're up in the air. So, anyway.
Well, it says here they're mobile solutions for content management, and apparently the FAA loves it because they approved of it replacing the traditional paper-based pilot flight bags with electronic flight bags.
Oh.
So basically, here's your tablet or Kindle or whatever it is, as long as it can wirelessly
Basically,
connect.
that's what they're doing with the railroaders.
Yeah.
So it's, well, we can see that coming. I mean, these submarines a long time ago went from the books to CDs for repair work and stuff. You know, CD takes a little CD player's that big, and here's a stack of CDs as opposed to a wall of books. You know, it makes sense.
I could see it for the airplanes because then you don't have to carry 4 pounds of charts.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But, like Brian said, if it's one of those days that you got a 3 a.m. report and you report it at 5 minutes to 3 and sign in, and the guy says, here's your paperwork, your engine's out there on the track, get in motion. Where's the time? Where's the time to do anything more than open the pad up, log in, stick it in your pocket, and chogy on out to the train?
Sure.
You know,
And
I can only remember twice in the 31 years that I was on the police department that something stuck a Bowie knife into a raw nerve, and you had to read something and then sign that you read it.
Oh, damn.
The rest of the time you had to go into the secretary's office and beg for a copy of the change on a general order or a special order. And you had to really be in somebody's good graces to get a copy of the department notice. And now all that stuff's on the computer.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's going to happen here is they'll have the tablets. The next step is, here's how you sign in. Just go on your tablet. Now we know where you're at. The tablet's got probably GPS built into it, so now they can track the employees. There's companies already tracking employees with their badges inside the building to see where they're at. Oh,
well,
you've been to the washroom 12 times.
If you didn't disable the location app on your phone, you can be tracked by your phone number.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
That's normal. I'm just saying, though, this is the first step in tracking the employees because, like, when you stepped onto the locomotive, the only way they knew where you were was where the train was. And that was an approximation, even with GPS. But now they got the tablet. They could tell if you got off the locomotive, go down, check out Mary's place, or have something to eat, and while you're running.
Nice phrasing of the title.
So, I mean, I could see heavy abuse working its way into here very easily.
Oh, yeah. I mean, everybody's going to try and take advantage.
So, anyway, on a lighter note, get off of that. Controversial Amtrak plan becomes, well, more controversial. Apparently in New York, there's 2 counties, Dutchess County and Columbia County, along Hudson River, where people were flocking across the tracks to go fish and belly whop or whatever they do in the river. And initially, Amtrak wanted to fence that all off, and the people went crazy and said no, and protested and stuff. Well, Amtrak wants to put in a fence because they're saying stuff like, well, you got people running out in front of the trains and stuff, and it's for a safety issue. So they need to install 2,400 feet of fences. And the people there are saying no, and Amtrak's saying, look, we'll put gates, we'll put protected crossings. Just tell us where you want them, and we'll fence the rest off. And they're fighting over it now. So it's a new controversy again.
Yeah, why be safe?
Yeah.
2,400 feet of fence isn't that hard to put up.
24,000, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, 24,000,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I was looking at the number here. And
but they can put 500 feet of fence up a day.
yeah, it's not a problem. But, I mean, it's just a matter of how much, what are the people used to doing walking across? I could stand at the Grayland station, look south, past Addison Avenue where the park is, and watch people crossing the track all day long.
Yeah.
You can do that at 95th and Vincennes.
And that's all fenced off. And it's up in the embankment. So you have to climb up climb over a fence, cross the tracks, climb over another fence, and come down the embankment to get to the park.
And
Obviously,
they do
there's
it.
holes in the fence.
Yeah.
So fencing's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to trap more people between the tracks. That's all it's going to do. Make it easier to pick them off.
And the thing is, that track's not owned by Amtrak. But Amtrak's going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, they're probably looking at 24,000 feet of fence is cheaper than settling one wrongful death lawsuit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a matter of economics at that point.
Yeah. I mean, even with that fence up and proper places to cross, you're still going to try to get nailed in the courts if somebody dies.
That's why they've been putting cameras on the locomotives. I don't agree with the ones interior, but at least the forward facing cameras.
I mean, if I get on a locomotive and it just has interior. Yeah. Thank you. See, I got rid of my eye teeth. Can't speak.
Can't see a word you say.
Yeah. And the what about the outside? That's where all the problems are.
Having ridden on a Operation Lifesaver law enforcement train, you cannot believe how genetically stupid some people are.
Oh, no, I can believe it very much.
I
face it all the time. That's not
I
even a
watched
problem.
the camera as cars, after the gates went down, from opposing sides of the gates crossed in front of the train.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's...
And then a pedestrian did it.
You know, I mean, what about all the court cases that went on with the one accident at Grand Avenue that one Thanksgiving several years ago? How many cars got wiped out?
About 17. I live in Elmwood Park. That's where it happened.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Yeah, that was like bowling cars.
And what they do? They force Metro to slow down.
Yep.
See, speed on that corner was 60 miles an hour. And what was funny, when you looked at every news story that night, every news story there, one of the things that was in the background was this big sign that said, "Do not stop or on the tracks."
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody blamed the traffic light 250 yards down because it didn't turn.
Well, same thing that happened in Fox Grove when that school bus got
Fox
hit.
River Grove, well, they had a bad timing enough, but you had a gal that was not familiar with it, even though she was the supervisor.
Yep. And they also, when the state came along to improve the other road, they shortened the distance between the tracks and the main street, too, so that the bus wouldn't even fit in there.
But
so there was a number of things that added up on that
the first thing they did was change the speed.
By
For
the way,
the expresses that were going through there, were going through at 70 mile an hour.
They're back to 70 now. They quietly upped the speed a couple of months ago.
They after the young man got killed at 87th and Pulaski, Metra redid the gates and retimed the signals.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so hopefully people won't continue to do.
Oh, they'll still continue to do stupid things.
You can't fix stupid.
No.
Yeah, you can.
Well, eventually Darwin's law
Boot to the head.
will solve the problem.
Great video.
Great song.
Yeah, it is.
It must be a Tom Lehrer song, and I haven't heard it.
No, it's by the Frantics. It's called Boot to the Head.
It's called Boot to the Head.
And it starts over.
And
it sounds like Gilbert Gottfried.
It has a couple variations.
Yeah. Here's a
I'll
guy
have to look
like
it up
Gilbert
on the
Gottfried
computer tomorrow.
He goes there.
Beluga.
He's at a karate class or something like that. I don't know.
Karate class.
And the guy goes, "We got to learn patience." The guy goes, "Oh, how long is that going to take?"
I think I'll just lie here.
Yeah. So anyway, and guess what? Virginia Port Authority is going to be testing autonomous trucks to move containers around at the port on and off of trains. So it's probably a place you don't want to hang around.
Well, considering when they try to do autonomous trains with your little men standing on the ground playing with the controls.
Oh, yeah, the remote control stuff. Yeah, I know somebody who was teaching people, and he gave it up. He asked to be transferred because he said, just like you said, you can't teach stupid. That's what he told me. And he was good at it, too. But German Railways is deploying HD mapping for their autonomous trains so that their trains know where they're supposed to be, and they look at the terrain and see if it matches what was mapped out with the radar, with the LADAR, and make sure you got the right one there. Mm-hmm. And I'm like thinking, okay, let's see, we use that in the cruise missiles, and Germany's going to use it in their trains. Very good.
Oh, well, you can use it they use it in any of the drones.
So it's I'm keeping these short so that because time is clocking here. Here was an interesting story. Ashram deploys an APS system for the tramway line in Turkey. So I'm looking at the picture and I'm reading this, and I go out to the Ashram site and check it out. It's 3 rail. There's a rail down the middle between the 2 tracks, and they're calling this brand new. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's the trick. The middle rail is in 1 meter sections that will turn on when the tram passes over it, power up to give the tram power, and when the tram goes off of it, shuts off again, so that way it's safe to walk on. That's the new. Say, they're talking this new technology. And I'm like, Lionel's had this for years. How could this be new?
Yeah. I mean, this is, so no outside third rail.
No.
You have the inside third rail.
It's inside third rail. They're touting it. Oh, look, no overhead wires, blah, 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 blah. So I looked at, they said they got it installed like in 11 cities. So I looked at the list. Well, let's see. All these 11 cities are in hot, dry areas. Very little rain. No snow. Would it work here? Probably not. We got trouble keeping the crossing gates working when they salt the hell out of the streets when it snows. So there's a better one out there. Brazil's got it. Brazil's got a tramway down there, putting in a second one finally because they did this one as a test run. And what their tram does is it's battery powered, but it also can draw power. And what they do is in the heavy areas where they can't put up wires, it runs on battery. When it pulls into a station, it raises the pantograph and recharges the battery while it's sitting there loading.
One of the cities have it here in the States.
Oh, which one?
Out, I think Kansas City.
And so that's probably the best way to do it, because if you don't want the overhead wires or can't put in overhead wires, you run on battery. When the wrinkle on theirs is when they go off the private right-of-way, they drop a third rail shoe. So it runs on third rail outside the city on private right-of-way. Inside the city, it's overhead at the stations only to recharge the batteries. And in between stations, it's running on battery. Better system. This third rail, great. Works well in Turkey. Turkey's a dry environment. They get rain once in a great while. I can't see it working in any of the cold climate areas at all. I don't know how they could justify it.
Well, somebody's going to try it.
Cold doesn't affect electricity. Wet affects electricity.
We put salt, sand, and whatever on the streets, so I could see that's where we could mess that up pretty easily.
Now, I think, Brian, you said it, that instead of having the old below-ground battery vaults that looked like 6-foot diameter sewer sections, they're putting those aluminum or galvanized metal buildings up to hold the batteries so that the batteries aren't below grade anymore. Mm-hmm. I tell you, what you're talking about, Doug, where things flood.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Yeah, I well,
Yeah, get permanent seal.
you can look at, yeah.
Get the railroad to spend a penny on what they need to spend it on.
And, of course, our favorite two entities, the Sioux Line and the Illinois Tollway, filed a report on December 29th asking for 60 more days of negotiation, saying that they might have a reply to the STB and what they're doing somewhere between March 8th and April 5th of this year. That makes it since November of 2014, they've been negotiating part of the Bensenville right-of-way away. Never-ending saga.
Yeah, the funny thing is they went and got all the housing and stuff to tear out so they could put the road in, and never even talked to the railroad.
Nope.
Originally.
They bought all the buildings, everything along Green Street next to the from the police station east has been torn down between the police station and the tollway. They bought all those buildings on the north side of Green Street, and they're all torn down. A fence is put up, little sign saying property of the state of Illinois, no trespassing. And then, there's like a 6-foot piece of fence with the sign in, and there's no more fence.
Isn't life so good?
Yeah, there was like a little driveway, so they put a fence and a sign, but next to the driveway, there's no fence.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Everything is just...
Is there any part of Bensenville left after the airport took half of it?
No, there's plenty left.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Well, they took everything, the airport took everything north of Irving Park. And about 2 blocks of the neighborhood south of Irving Park to move Irving Park over. And then the rest went to the airport.
Unbelievable.
I'm done. I know you guys want to go home, so.
Oh, hell no.
No, Brian's got.
We're all
on,
moving
Brian.
into your garage.
Oh, good. You'll have to share it with the cats.
Oh, yeah.
Love cats. Great moving targets, and they reproduce rapidly.
Well, we can talk about some preservation that's going on. U.S. Sugar, for the new year, when they cut its first cut of sugar cane down in Florida, to pull the cane, they used number 148, the Pacific, that they bought back. The ex-ACL Pacific. And they use that to pull the sugarcane cars. That's good news. That's a good way to start. I noticed also there was a thing that went out on video from Age of Steam. They had their 060 Moorhead and North Fork engine up and running. Next steam locomotive to get totally fitted. Well, it's getting ready to get its tubes put back in. The Oregon Pacific and Eastern, number 19, the ex-McCloud River 19. Better known as number 19 going to Portland on Emperor of the North. That's, Csx Train. But they're getting ready to put that up, and they're getting ready to start working on the Camelback, start restoring it. Now, a locomotive display to be enhanced. Beautiful locomotive that's been on display since the 20s.
Where?
Philadelphia. A place called the Franklin Institute.
Oh, okay.
A 410-2 that was built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works. It's number 60,000. They built the engine and it ran on 3 types of fuel. And it was a 3-cylinder 410-2. And like I said, it was the 60,000. Its number comes from being the 60,000th locomotive built. It was designed to be the best locomotive that Baldwin ever built. 3 cylinders, weighed 350 short tons, and pulled 70,000 short tons at a top speed of 70 miles an hour. It was very innovative but experimental, so that meant to be a model for future development. However, the demonstration didn't get the expected response.
Basically, nobody was impressed.
Well, they weren't going to buy it. They were going for something else. So in '33, it was donated to the Franklin Institute, pulled down the street on the one set of 4'8" trolley tracks that they had, because all the rest were 5 foot.
Why did they have Imperial Russian gauge in Philadelphia?
It was a Pennsylvania state law. The Pennsylvania Railroad.
They did it so that the railroads couldn't use the trolley tracks.
And then the railroads got the law passed that made them 5 foot 2 inch, so that the trolley companies couldn't compete against the railroads for freight.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That was back in the age of interlocking directorates.
Yep.
All right.
I know being a history
So it's been
student
sitting on the track
something.
inside the Institute for more than 80 years. The exhibit space is getting redesigned thanks to a $6 million gift from the Hamilton Family Charitable Trust. Matt Hamilton says the trust says the 1926 locomotive has ties to his family. His great-grandfather, Samuel M. Vauclain, donated it to the museum back in the 1930s. He was president and then chairman of the board of Baldwin Locomotive Works.
Well, that'll help.
Yep. Thanks to the gift, the new gallery will be built around the locomotive, the walls, and the 300-ton locomotive will stay in place, but the floor of the gallery will be cut away to make the exhibit a 2-story affair. The newly designed exhibit is expected to be completed for the Franklin Institute's 200th anniversary in 2024. And Little River Railroad locomotive returns. The number 110 462 Pacific, said to be the smallest standard gauge Pacific in the world. It's being rebuilt and ready to power this season's Christmas trains when they get finished. They're going through the whole 15-year rebuild. That's what they're doing. And a sad note update.
Yeah.
As you know, I'm very familiar with the Roadside America railway exhibit built in 1953, but has an 80-year history. Because before that, it was a layout was built at a building from an abandoned amusement park, Personia, and then it had taken over the guy's basement. Originally built standard gauge, it became O gauge. Is now there's no way to save it. The person buying the property wants nothing to do with running a train layout. So they've got it on the auction block. 28th of December, they started. You can go online, get set up, and you can push your boats in. All buildings are listed. Average between $250 and $350. There are some smaller items that are listed. They all have. It's funny. All the suggested price has all been bid and up $10. So I guess somebody put in a view figuring he'll get something out of it. But he put a price tag on everything that he could. Now, there are paintings for sale also that were listed, and signs and such. All rolling stock. This portion of the auction is going to end on the 23rd. By the 24th, all the rolling stock that was on the layout will be put up. I know it'll be in bundles. There were locomotives that had run that were all sitting on sidings and such. I mean, let's see. Well, you can see in the pictures, if you look, sidetracks, look at all the locomotives sitting there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of it's pre-war, too. Plus, there are hand-built locomotives there.
Look at the corner.
You know, like when you look through here, you can see some of them. The big thing about it was, you know, you can see like all the cars sitting in the yard and such. This is the way it shows. He went up to the hill on Mount Penn, just outside of Reading. I know because I've walked up there. I heard about the trolley trail. They had actually had a real gravity railway running to a hotel up there. They had an old 40, pulled the cars up, and then they just let the cars go, and by gravity they went back down 6 miles the track.
Cool.
And then the steam locomotive goes and picks them up. And but he was out as a kid, and Mom kicked him out of the house. The way he tells the story, I got to meet the guy. I found out he was my dad's boss. It's his cousin. But, you know, so I got to meet him like a couple years before he died. But he liked the view from the mountain down on the town. He wanted to build a train layout, just like looking off from a mountain. And by the pictures that you've seen in here, I think he accomplished it quite well.
Yes, he did. Looks good. It's too bad.
It's amazing what he did. And they had the day-night scenery and stuff. Had about 40 buttons all around. So this way you could push, and you could see something going. One of them took care of one of the trolleys. Road working gang got steamroller going back and forth. You had you see a coal in the mine being moved and such. Really interesting. It's a real shame that this is going to disappear. But if anybody feels that they can get like to get into it, they can go to auction. Go to auction.com, and they come up with a site, and you just go by state, go by Pennsylvania, and then you'll see a sign for Reading, Pennsylvania, and that's the gentleman that's doing the auction. But I think it's about time for us to say goodbye. Sorry we dragged on. Again, Happy New Year to everybody. Be safe. Until we come again next month. Our express now is coming into the terminal. We want to thank you for joining us on our journey through the wonderful world of trains. Chicago Junction is a production of the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and can be listened to on the web at www.windycityhometown.com, where you can listen to tonight's broadcast and all of our past programs. You can also sample some of the other fine programs that are being offered. Till next month when we journey to Chicago Junction, this is your announcer, Brian Blue, saying happy rails to you.
You have been listening to Chicago Junction on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, January the 13th, the year 2021. Chicago Junction was produced and directed by John DeVita, and our special thanks to the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Chiconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Wednesday, January the 13th, the year 2021. Until next time, friends, please be safe and thanks for listening.